When I bought my very first self-storage facility without using a single dollar of my own money, it honestly felt illegal, but it wasn't. It was 100% legit. And I've since done it several times and even have coaching clients doing it at this very moment. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it step by step. Even if you're brand new, you're broke or have no experience and think you don't have enough money to invest in self-storage. And if you stay with me until the end, I'm also going to break down how I found the deal, how I funded them, and even built passive income consistent monthly cash flow without the headaches of tenants, toilets, and trash. So let's dive right in. So I want to go ahead and first, I think it's important that you understand a little bit about my journey as a real estate investor. Now, I have been doing this full time since 2005 and have been fortunate enough to work with hundreds and hundreds of real estate investors and coach them to success. And it was about 2018, 2019 that I started to experience burnout from the transactional nature of the residential business. Now, we were doing some fix and flip, but primarily I ran a wholesaling business, and the grind and hustle and chasing from going from deal to deal no longer aligned with my goals and vision. And it was around 2020 that I decided to shut down a profitable wholesaling operation and ultimately transition into self-storage. Now, you might ask, why would you shut down a profitable business? I had closed north of 750, 800 transactions up until that point. And it was because there was a big problem in the real estate investing space, particularly with single family and wholesaling and fix and flip and all these different type of strategies that force you to go from deal to deal only to feel like you're constantly chasing your own tail and not really getting ahead. So maybe you're watching this and you're a real estate investor, or maybe you want to be. Maybe you're stuck in a 9 to 5 or a job that you hate. But the one thing that you might be able to relate with is that it could feel like a hamster wheel. Maybe you're tired of grinding it out and hustling, or maybe chasing deals, and you're experiencing that income roller coaster where you have a good month followed by a couple bad months. Or maybe you get consistent income, but it's just not quite enough. It doesn't allow you to do the things that you want to do with your loved ones and experience life the way that you want to experience. Maybe you're just not generating the cash flow that you want, or you have a business and you want to scale it, but there's a lot of challenges that come with scaling that business because there's so many moving parts. And at times it feels like you're chasing a moving target. I know I've experienced that. Or maybe you're just in the wrong vehicle. For me, wholesaling was the wrong vehicle, right? Or maybe you're in an outdated strategy and you haven't really evolved and changed with the times. Speaking of the times, if you've been paying attention, the wholesaling space in particular, the industry's changing. There's a lot of new laws depending on the state that you might be operating in. And there's different laws that are affecting landlords and different niches within real estate that you really need to pay attention to that are creating additional challenges and headaches for people. And that's really the thing. That's what I have experienced with single family, is that it's one big headache. So whether you're wholesaling or you're building a portfolio, because of the fact that you're dealing with tenants and toilets and trash and just the constant evolving, moving nature of single family, it brings upon a lot of headaches. And not to mention the increased competition, right? It feels like people are coming in by the droves every single day because the barriers to entry are so low that HGTV makes it look like anybody can do this. And if you're trying to automate it, we know that can bring upon its own challenges. And really, at the end of the day, you're trading time for money, and you know that there's no way to get ahead. But as with every problem, there is a solution. And what I discovered is that self-storage is that solution if what you want is to generate cash flow consistently, you want to build wealth, and you want to experience freedom. And that's exactly what Bob Copper was quoted as saying, is that self-storage is the most passive form of real estate investing, allowing for substantial time freedom. Now, I might tweak the word passive and say semi-passive, if I'm being honest. But what I can tell you is that this business can lead to freedom if done the right way, and if you follow a proven process and a roadmap, which I'll outline here for you today. And so it's a business that can be scaled. It's a business that provides time freedom so that at the end of the day, you're able to build the lifestyle that you want and do the things that are most important to you and your loved ones. So let me just quickly highlight a part of my experience with self-storage over the last 5 years or so. And the two facilities that you see there on the screen to the left, left is a portfolio that I recently successfully sold, over 650 units across 80,000 net rentable square feet. I'm going to highlight those as some case studies a little bit later on, so you're definitely going to want to stick around to watch that. And then I also own a few more facilities, one in Florida. We're actually closing on one with a Storage Wins coaching client in Illinois at the end of this month. And so the cool thing about storage is you don't have to do a lot of deals. It's not really a volume business for it to have a significant impact on your life and on your financial situation. And, I want to go ahead and highlight Sam Zell, who, if you don't know Sam Zell, real estate mogul, billionaire, investor, philanthropist, he was quoted as saying self-storage is the only real estate asset class that performs well in good times and in bad times. And when I was thinking of transitioning out of the single family wholesaling space and I was looking at the different commercial asset classes, that's one of the things that kept jumping out at me about self-storage is how recession resistant of an asset class it is. And you can go ahead and fact check me and do your research on this. In good times and in bad times, historically speaking, self-storage does pretty well. And so I think it's important now that we talk about, that's just one of the reasons, one of the many reasons I think this is truly the best asset class in real estate. But why self-storage? Like, why should you consider adding this to your portfolio? And I think it's a great question. We talked about how recession resistant it can be. We talked about the headaches that come in the single family wholesale, in the single family residential business, and particular transactional natured businesses like wholesaling and fix and flip. Well, with self-storage, we're not dealing with tenants and toilets and trash. And so we don't have the typical headaches that a single family property would bring. And one of the things that is pretty awesome about self-storage is that the value of these facilities is not based on what another storage facility sold in the area. In other words, unlike residential, it's not based on comparable sales. We can do something called forced appreciation. So check this out. When we raise the rates on the units, when we collect money on late fees and auction fees and lock fees and admin fees, and that increases the revenue of the facility, the net operating income of the facility goes up. And when that happens, there's an exponential impact on the overall value of that asset based on the income that it produces. So by increasing the revenue and the net operating income, we get to force the appreciation. We don't have to sit around and wait for the market conditions or for somebody else to sell a storage facility to hopefully raise the value of ours. And we talked about how recession resistant it is. Well, because the operating expense ratio is about 30 to 40% in self-storage, it just means that the profit margins are bigger. Now, if you were to compare that to multifamily, which is another commercial real estate asset class, the operating expense ratio is between 45 to 55%, right? So the profit margins aren't as juicy. Now, when I say operating expense ratio, as an example, let's say a storage facility generates $100,000 in annual revenue. Well, it would take between $30,000 and $40,000 in operating expenses to generate that $100,000 in revenue. That's a 30 to 40% operating expense ratio. I love the fact that the management is simple. When I started building a single family rental portfolio, thinking that was going to be my path to freedom, even though I had a property manager, I still had to manage the property manager. And the truth is, no matter what asset you own, if you have a third party manager in place, you still got to manage that person. No doubt about it. Storage is no different, but it doesn't come with quite the headaches that it does with single family. And because the operations are straightforward and pretty simple, it just doesn't have a lot of complexity. And one of the things I've learned in my entrepreneurial journey is that simplicity scales and complexity fails. And I learned that years ago. I'd love to give credit to the person that said that, but it always stuck with me. And it's so true. You want a simple, boring business, and that's exactly what self-storage is. But it's a simple, boring business that provides consistent, predictable cash flow, particularly if you're buying the right facilities in the right markets. And we'll talk about that. So I realize that this is pretty repulsive, right? Like, this is a disgusting image, but I want this image to burn in your brain, because if you own single family rentals, you or somebody on your team from time to time has to deal with this. It might be a plumber, God forbid it's you or somebody else, but In self-storage, we don't have toilets. We don't have, complicated HVAC systems unless you have a climate controlled building. But traditional drive-up storage, we're not dealing with tenants and toilets and trash and HVAC systems. So again, it's simpler and it doesn't have the complexities and the maintenance issues that a single family residence would have. And here's something that's pretty cool that I find most people don't know. In storage, we don't evict people when they're in default, when they're behind and they're not paying their monthly rent. In storage, there's something called lien laws, which basically means that within 60 to 70 days, generally speaking, depending on what state that facility is located in, is provided you follow a certain process and you notify the customer and you do certain things in terms of publications, then you can, if they don't pay, you can auction off the contents of the unit. You'll generate a little bit of revenue there. And more importantly, you can now clean out that unit and put it back online to rent, right? So within 60 to 70 days, we can get a non-paying customer, make a little bit of money by auctioning off their things. And by the way, this is streamlined and automated online, right? We no longer have to go there and have in-person auctions like you used to see in Storage Wars back in the day. But most importantly, we don't have the long drawn out eviction process of 3, 6, 9 months and thousands of dollars. In fact, we're actually getting paid a little bit of money in order to make the unit available to rent. And that's really where the opportunity is getting the vacant units online ready to rent so we can generate more revenue, increase the net operating income of the business. And, if you've ever owned a single family rental, you've probably dealt with this, right? If you have a tenant turnover, tenant leaves your property and now you have to what's called make ready. And I have dealt with this, maybe not quite as bad as the picture that you see here, but a lot of these tenants don't care about your property and they will destroy it. And maybe you're watching this and that strikes a chord with you, because I know I've experienced a version of this. Well, in storage, we're talking about 3 walls and a metal garage door. We rent space. It's pretty simple. So we don't have to worry about people tearing the unit up on the way out, which is pretty awesome. And then I love this picture because it's a very sticky product. Generally speaking, when people move into a storage unit, they tend to stay for a long time. In fact, at our storage facilities, on average, people stay around 3 years, which is great because of the consistent, predictable cash flow and revenue that's generated month after month after month. But here's the good news, right? We talked about the problem with the single family space, or if you're stuck in a 9 to 5 and you're restricted. We talked about the opportunity with self-storage and why I truly believe it is the best asset class in real estate. Now, here's the good news. Let's actually start to transition as to how you can benefit from this asset classes, regardless of your situation. So I don't care if you don't have money or your own capital. Maybe you have bad credit, right? Or maybe you're new to this business. You've never done a deal. You have no experience. If you are committed, if you have the right mindset, and if you do the work and you just follow a process, even doing it part-time, you can succeed in this business, right? Now, I can't use the word guarantee because results aren't typical, right? I need to say that. I think that's super important. That just because you see that I succeed and you're going to see some of my coaching clients succeed, it doesn't mean you're going to succeed. But I also can tell you, one thing I can guarantee that is if you don't do anything, you won't succeed. That I can guarantee you. And so this is an experience share, so take it for what it's worth. But my experience has been is if you're surrounded by the right people, if you're following a proven process and roadmap, if you believe in yourself, and if you do the work, then you can achieve success in this business. That's been my experience. So I want to kind of transition into the first case study here. So this is actually the first deal that I bought back in 2021. And I was able to buy this deal without using any of my own money. I needed about $350,000 to get into this deal, which God knows I didn't have. But because I had built relationship capital up, because I had focused on giving and building relationships with the right people, I was able to bring on an equity partner to fund the $350,000 we needed to get into this deal, which allowed me to get into the deal with $0 out of my own pocket. And we ended up buying this facility for $1.592 million. And just last year in October, sold this for $2.495, at least at the time of this recording. And so we enjoyed steady cash flow every single month for about 3 years, and then had a nice little equity pop on the back end. And really your success in self-storage, and I think this can apply to any business, just in life, it's just a general life principle, is built on just meaningful relationships with the right people. That's what I want you to draw from this particular case study. It's not so much that you can buy your facility without having to use your own money, which you certainly can, but it's relationship capital. And by the way, something I didn't mention is I told you how I was able to bring on on an equity partner, which basically means somebody who got a piece of the deal in exchange for the $350,000 that he put into the deal. Well, I was able to go to the Small Business Administration and get financing for 85% of the purchase price. And that's one of the things I hadn't even mentioned yet, that self-storage is the best of both worlds. It is an actual business that's a hard asset and it has the benefits of real estate. So we talked about forced depreciation. We talk about depreciation, tax benefits, cash flow. All those things is wrapped up into an actual business. Now, the reason SBA is willing to give a loan is because it's an actual business. Now, I don't believe SBA gives out loans to buy a single family home. And that's because buying a single family home isn't a business. So I love the fact that if you're an opportunity seeker and you're looking to get involved in a hard asset that's a real business, self-storage is the best of both worlds. Now, this is actually the second deal that I purchased. And the cool thing about this one is that the seller became the bank. So what I mean by that is we bought this with 90% seller financing. In other words, the seller financed 90% of the purchase price. And all I needed to get into this deal was 10%. I ended up partnering with a coaching client of mine at the time. And so between myself and him, I got a private money lender and the 10% we needed to get into the deal. Another deal that we were able to get into without using any of my own money. And the cool thing about this facility is that the rates were so low. They hadn't been raised in years. We were able to go in there and effectively double the street rates. And that had a significant increase in the revenue. We generate roughly about $3,000 or so in cash flow on this facility. But the exciting thing about this particular facility is that once we get up to about 85% occupancy, this facility should generate somewhere in the range of $8,000 to $9,500 a month in net cash flow. And what I mean by net cash flow, just to be clear, is revenue minus expenses gives you your net operating income. Now we factor in debt service, the monthly obligation that we have to the seller, because effectively he became the bank. After we pay the seller, after we pay the debt service, our net cash flow on this facility, once we get up to about 85% occupancy, should be somewhere in about the $9,000 a month range, which is pretty awesome because $9,000 to $10,000 a month is a number I hear pretty frequently from people. What would $9,000 to $10,000 a month do for you in your situation? That's the power of self-storage. And this is just one deal. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen on every deal, but the cool thing about storage is that it doesn't have to be a volume game. You know, when I was wholesaling, we had to consistently do at least 2 deals a month just to break even. But really, we were after 4, 5, 6 plus deals a month. Well, in storage, 1 to 2, maybe 3 good deals a year, and it can have a significant impact on your life and on your financial situation. And then here's just one more case study that I've been involved in is I was able to buy this facility for $1.2 million, about 37,000 net rentable square feet. And the cool thing is that 100% of the purchase price was funded by private money lenders. And again, another deal that I was able to do without having to use any of my own money, successfully sold that facility for just under $2 million, right? So I experienced significant profit. I didn't have any partners on this one, which was pretty cool. And this was all possible because of relationship capital, right? I'm not any more special than you. I'm not any smarter than you. I've just been very intentional about building relationships with the right people. And I truly believe that relationship capital is the most valuable capital that you could ever raise. So if you take nothing else from this, make sure that you lean on that, is building relationships and the power of your network. It is very true when people say your network is and equals your net worth. So look, I want to transition and share with you how locating mom and pop storage facilities can be on easy mode for you. Now, first, let's talk about finding and choosing the right markets, right? So I like tertiary markets. So I'm not looking for storage in big metropolitan cities like where I live in Miami. I'm looking for markets that have a population size, generally speaking, between 5,000 and 70,000 people. I definitely want to see the population growing. I want to see jobs coming in. I like to look for the average medium household income to be $50,000 or greater. If I can get north of $60,000, even better. But picking the right market, a market that is not overly saturated with storage, that has demand for storage, is extremely important to your success in this business. And one of the things I take my Storage Wins coaching clients through is how to leverage a virtual assistant to build your storage facility list, what I call your initial top 100. And it's very simple. I'm going to show you exactly how you or a virtual assistant can do this, but all you're going to do is hop on Google Maps and look for a few key indicators that is a strong indication that is a mom and pop self-storage owner and that there could be an opportunity there. So if you're watching this and you've driven through neighborhoods and you've seen like boarded up houses, you've seen yellow police tape, overgrown grass, overstuffed mailbox, those are indications that that is a vacant property. This is kind of the equivalent, not really, but sort of. So if you see a facility that doesn't have a website and it doesn't have some of the things we're going to talk about now, it's an indication it's a mom and pop operated facility. So hopefully that analogy kind of hits home with you. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Google Maps. So maps.google.com, and you're going to type in any city and state that you think you might be interested in owning a storage facility in, right? We're just going to go on a storage hunt for now. And then you're going to click that nearby button that you see in the red box right there. And you're going to type in self-storage. And what that is going to do is that's going to bring up the Google map pack, if I can speak. That's going to bring up, you're going to see a bunch of red dots. And those are the storage facilities that Google picks up. And what initially, the first thing I train a virtual assistant to do is to look for facilities that do not have a website. Now, how do you know if it has a website or not? Well, as you can see highlighted in the red box, Texas Boulevard, you don't see that little circle that says website. And if you were to look above and below it, you do see the circle. So let me put this in context and give you some perspective. Over 70% of our customers come, I'm talking about storage customers, come from some sort of online presence. That could be our Google My Business. That could be SEO, right? Search engine optimization. That could be just doing a Google search. That can be from pay-per-click or Google advertising. So if it stands to reason that if more than 2/3 of our customers come from some sort of online presence, then it's important to have a website. It's kind of like the importance of having a door in your house. Otherwise, like anybody could walk in. Well, the difference is here is that if you don't have a website, the only way people can find you is if they actually walk into your facility. And that's not what we want here. So if there's no website, it's a strong indication that that operator is not maximizing some very simple levers that can help the business and increase the overall value of that facility. We also look for facilities that sometimes don't have phone numbers or incorrect phone numbers. We look for facilities that have low number of reviews. Sometimes they have poor reviews, right? Or they have, anything under 4 stars. Those are things that we instantly train our virtual assistant to add to our list. The only thing that we have them exclude are the Class A type facilities, right? The institutional funded facilities like Public Storage, Extra Space, Cube Smart, Life Storage, U-Haul. Those are the main ones. Those are not the facilities we're trying to go out and buy. In fact, generally speaking, I don't even like to be in markets where they operate. Here's a perfect example. So one of the things we do is we build that list, and we or somebody on our team, like a virtual assistant, we train them to smile and dial, and we can cold call them. So we can actually just have a very low pressure conversation with people. In fact, we don't even have a fancy script. This is what the script sounds like. Hey, my name is Alex. I came across your storage facility on Google, and I realize we don't know each other and this is a random call, but I was just wondering, have you ever considered selling the facility, and might you be open to an offer? So that's a version of a way that you can call someone and just strike up a conversation. This is not a pitch. It's not a presentation. It's just human to human connection. So take the pressure off and just smile and dial. Well, another way that we target these facilities is with direct mail. Now, what you see here is a facility that I was able to get under contract. And here's the cool thing about this. Let me share with you a quick story. A couple of years ago, right before my family and I were getting ready to travel to Italy, I got a call from this super sweet, nice lady. And she said, "Hey, Alex, you sent me a letter wanting to buy my facility 2 years ago. And I was thinking about selling it, but the timing was off, and I've held on to your letter, and I'm wondering if you're still interested in buying." Well, I ended up buying. Technically, I didn't buy it. More on that in a second, but I ended up putting it under contract for $400,000. And I ended up, essentially, it wasn't an assignment because the seller's attorney did not allow me to assign the contract, but I essentially sold 100% of the interest in the LLC that was created at the time of closing to my friend who was the ultimate buyer of this facility. And he ended up buying it for $550,000. And so I was able to generate a net profit of $150,000. Now, to kind of frame this in the right context, when I was wholesaling single family homes, I would have to close 7 to 8 deals in order to generate that kind of profit. And that was when our average profit per transaction was about $20,000 a deal, which there were certain years where it was much lower than that. So let's just say anywhere between 7 and 12 deals, I would have to essentially wholesale just to make the profit on one deal. And that's the cool thing about storage, is that if you come across an opportunity and it doesn't quite fit your buy box, doesn't quite fit what you're looking for, you have the opportunity to wholesale that asset just like you would anything else. The only difference is there's usually an extra zero attached to it. At least that's been my experience. But the important part about this is I asked her, I said, you mentioned you kept my letter for 2 years. Like, why did you keep my letter for 2 years? And that's actually what I'm sharing with you right here. She said, well, I've gotten letters from time to time, but yours really spoke to me. It was very personalized. You included a beautiful picture of your family, and it felt very relatable. And in fact, there's a link in the description below where you can actually watch another video where I broke down what made this letter so effective. And you can actually, I encourage you to swipe and test this yourself, like deploy this letter so that you can experience some of this success. And I think it's important to highlight that I'm not special. I'm not any smarter than you. Like, I just was committed to do this, and I just kind of followed a process that I figured out. And I have coaching clients doing the same. So Casey and his beautiful wife and family here, like, they just recently, within 9 months of joining our community, closed on their second storage facility. He said, we just purchased our second storage facility within 9 months of joining the Storage Wins coaching community. It's impossible to not win when they're standing right beside you. Thank you to Alex and the community for all your support and guidance. And I give Casey all the credit because he just followed our process, our roadmap, and then he took massive imperfect action. Casey is actually, this is not typical, but Casey bought his first storage facility within 91 days of joining our community because he was that committed to this. And I want to highlight that is not the usual, that results are not typical. And this is an experience share, and this is what Casey experienced. This is what I've experienced. So I'm not saying you're going to succeed if you get involved in storage, but it can be a very powerful asset class when you're surrounded by the right people that are pouring into you and you're just following a proven roadmap. So super proud of Casey and his wife for their success here. And now they're well on their way to time and financial freedom. And that's because they followed that roadmap, right? Like, where we taught them how to find the deals, how to analyze them, how to make offers, how to secure the funding. And I didn't even mention that Casey bought both of those facilities, both of them on seller financing. So similar to my second deal, he turned the seller into the bank, and he did it while driving around. That's the crazy thing. He didn't pick up the phone and cold call, or he wasn't cold calling per se. He did it by driving around. He didn't even send direct mail. And we'll link up a video in the description that walks you through how he did that very thing, how he found it, how he structured it. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of both of those videos that I mentioned. But really the process is, once you secure the financing, is how do you go through due diligence and actually buy the facility? Then it becomes about operations. How do you optimize and scale for performance and for increased revenue, increased net operating income, which is what has the exponential impact on the overall value of the asset. And that's what leads to cash flow and building wealth and ultimately financial freedom. That's what I find most people want. And I know for certain that's what Kate P., another one of my coaching clients, who admittedly at the time of this recording, she hasn't quite closed on this facility. She's in about 2 weeks away from closing. And this was the picture she took when she did her on-site due diligence. And she's just super pumped. And again, this is something that she was committed to. And that's why she's going to reap the rewards of her efforts, because she surrounded herself with the right community and she just kind of followed the process and put the work in. And that's really the key to success. It's nothing else. So the one thing Casey knows and one thing Kate knows, one thing I certainly know, is that this is not complicated. If you want to go fast, you can certainly do this by yourself. But if you want to go far, you can do it together. And that's why we created the Storage Wins coaching community. So I'll just quickly share with you, if any of this appeals to you and you want to plug into a system and learn our methodology, you want to understand how to find these opportunities, how to secure the funding, and ultimately how to operate these for cash flow and to build wealth, I want to encourage you to just schedule a call so we can have a no pressure conversation and just see if coaching is a fit. storagewins.com/apply. I'll see you on the next one.